Taking a look at your most recent college football playoff rankings, Tuesday's release. No news is no news. Only change here in the top 10 as you say goodbye to Oklahoma. They drop all the way to number 13 from their previous 8th overall ranking after that loss to Baylor. But top 4 standing pat, it goes Georgia, Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State. There you're looking at your potential, if it ended today, matchups between the Bulldogs, the Buckeyes, Bama, and Oregon. For more on the movement or lack thereof, we say hello to the two-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden and our college football insider Dennis Dodd. Gentlemen, the top 4 staying put with some minor changes at the back end of the top 10 there, but ones we foresaw. Dennis, I'll start with you. You always help us read between the lines. What's the big takeaway from CFP number 3 with the lack of movement?
Well, I'm looking at it from 35,000 feet because now with 2 weeks left in the regular season, this thing is kind of crystallized. I think we all agree Georgia's going to have a spot. If Alabama wins, there's going to be 2 spots spoken for. Okay, who gets the other spots? I think right now, if Oregon wins out, they're going to have one of those spots because the only competition they're going to have for that top 4 that I read from that list right now is the Big Ten champion, specifically Ohio State or Michigan if they get in. That looks pretty good for Oregon right now. I know they play Utah, and then they probably have a rematch with Utah, but it's getting to the point now for Oregon where it's win and you're in. Stop talking about strength of schedule. The only challengers now, Cincinnati still needs help. We know that. Notre Dame a long shot at 11-1, and if the Big 12 has any shot, and it's a small one right now, let's start talking about Oklahoma State. They're 9th. The teams above them can lose, and they can get into the conversation for the number 4 spot, competing with an undefeated Cincinnati. What do you do with an Oklahoma State who maybe beats Oklahoma twice at the end of the year? Oklahoma and Baylor, pretty impressive. So they're in the conversation. So right now, it is what it is, and you're going to have teams lose for this thing to really get jumbled again. But you can kind of see now it's between 5 or 6 teams.
I know for me, when I look at the list, the committee, they really value Michigan and Michigan State. And I think based on seeing how much they value those teams, things can get a bit interesting in the Big Ten, especially this week with Michigan State traveling to Ohio State in that Big Ten matchup. If Michigan State take care of their business, I mean, they have an inside track to get into the top 4 when it's all said and done. And of course, Ohio State and Michigan as well. So just the value I think the committee is showing when you look at Michigan State took care of Michigan, had an ugly loss to Purdue. They bounced back last week. And seeing what Michigan has been able to do. And of course, they will be that final matchup against Ohio State could be all the chips could be on the table at that said time. It's going to be very, very interesting. So there are quite a few different scenarios for the Big Ten and deciding which team for the Big Ten will get into the final playoff rankings when it's all said and done. But they really value and really respect Michigan and Michigan State, what I've seen over the last 2 weeks.
Now, Michigan State does have that head-to-head over Michigan, yet they are 1 spot behind, which kind of begs the question here, Dennis. How much of a jump could they take if they do clip Ohio State? Obviously, if Ohio State suffers that loss, you'd assume they jump out of the top 4. Oregon then with a win would slot in at number 3. Would you talk about Michigan State being the 4th overall team and leapfrogging Michigan and others?
Yeah, I think you'd have to. I mean, you'd have to talk about that. Look, both of these things can still happen in the Big Ten. In the next 2 weeks, each of those contenders, those top 3 teams, can each lose again and knock the Big Ten out of the playoffs. That can happen. Look at those schedules. I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan goes to Maryland and has a tussle. Ohio State, Michigan State. Michigan State wins out, they're the champions. And guess what? Now you're looking at maybe 2 teams from the Big Ten. That could happen too. And in that scenario, it would be Michigan as a 2nd place team in the East at 11-1, their only loss. The committee's already telling us with the rankings these last few weeks that they thought Michigan held up pretty well in that Michigan State loss, and maybe in the back of their minds they're saying they might have won the game with that fumble that went into the end zone with Peyton Thorne. So that can happen too. Yes, I know Jerry Palm will tell you it's a long shot, but those 2 things can happen. The best thing that can happen for the Big Ten is Ohio State to win out. I think we all believe that Ohio State's the best team right now, at least offensively, in the Big Ten. They're doing great things with C.J. Stroud and those receivers. Defensively, not too much. How's that going to look against Michigan State and Michigan down the stretch? So that's going to be interesting as heck. I mean, yeah, if Michigan State wins out, I think they've got a great claim to be in the top.
Yeah, Ohio State still yet to lose a Big Ten contest under Ryan Day. We'll see if that trend continues here in the weeks moving forward. Oregon, I will point out, is a short underdog on the road against Utah this week, so perhaps a loss there opens up the door for Cincinnati. We do have to talk about Cincy, who have SMU and East Carolina remaining on their schedule. Style points are paramount here, BMAC. Obviously, you can only play your schedule and hope for the best elsewhere. They'll be watching that Oregon matchup very closely. They'll also be watching that Michigan State-Ohio State game very closely. But for what they can do over the next 2 weeks, what needs to be done for Cincinnati to make their strongest case?
Joe, most importantly for Cincy, they just got to win. I know style points matter when it comes to the college football playoff rankings, especially for a team like Cincinnati, who's not in Power 5 play. But they have to win, and they will be scoreboard watching, as you just mentioned. They have to monitor and see what is going on around them. But the most important thing for them is SMU this weekend. A very, very big ball game. It's safe to say that's their last big ball game, and they finish off against East Carolina on the road. But they have to take care of their business. They don't have the same luxury as some of these other teams that we mentioned of having a loss. If they lose their playoff hosts, they're done. It's still a long shot for them to get in being undefeated, but clearly if they take a L this week or next week, it's all said and done. They won't have a shot in getting to the playoffs. So they need some chaos that happen. They definitely need Oregon to take a loss this weekend against Utah, maybe having another loss happen from Alabama, and seeing what could happen with Michigan State and Ohio State. And like Jerry said, if Michigan State wins out, they will jump Cincinnati, in my opinion, but they need a lot of chaos for them to happen for them to have an opportunity to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, they'll be tracking it all very closely. One thing we've tracked here, and as we said, it was expected, Oklahoma falling out. They were the big story in week 1 of the rankings, with them sort of being snubbed or left to the latter parts of the top 10 there. They now fall to win a number 13 following their loss to Baylor. Feels like, I mean, best case scenario, one-way ticket to the Sugar Bowl if they can win out and be a Big 12 champion, Dennis. There is that chance that we're left to assess a one-loss Big 12 champion. Detail the road back if there is one for Boomer, or is it roll credits right now following this loss?
Yeah, I don't know if there is one right now. Whatever you think about Oklahoma going into tonight, that the committee had ranked them too low, it doesn't matter now. They didn't respect them before tonight. They don't respect them now. They dropped 5 spots after losing to a pretty good Baylor team. That was one of the worst games a Lincoln Riley coached team has played at Oklahoma. They haven't scored that few points since the 2014 Russell Athletic Bowl against Clemson. And by the way, ironically, that's the game that got Josh Heupel fired as offensive coordinator and brought in Lincoln Riley. So it's been that long, almost 7 years. The fewest yards Oklahoma has put up in a game in the Lincoln Riley era. So deservedly so, maybe, dropping 5 spots to 13. They can still win the Big 12, but as I said up top, the Big 12's best shot now is Oklahoma State at number 9, winning out and hoping for chaos on top. But I think Oklahoma's all but done. A motivated Iowa State team this week, then Oklahoma State. Look, Bedlam, anything can happen, but I think Oklahoma State's the best team in the Big 12 right now. So even if Oklahoma wins, they'd be knocking out the Big 12's best team in the to get to the championship game. So all but done for the Sooners right now.
Yeah, I agree with Dennis. Oklahoma, undefeated, didn't get any respect from the committee. Clearly, they're not getting any respect with that big-time loss last week to Baylor. And in the Big 12 in totality, the best team, the best chances, that has the best chances is Oklahoma State. And I think it still would be a long stretch if Oklahoma State wins out. For some reason, the Big 12, they're just not getting the respect as some of these other conferences. And we saw that in the first official playoff rankings, right? OU was undefeated. They fell behind Michigan. They fell behind Cincinnati. They're not valuing the entire Big 12. I don't think it's just Oklahoma, guys. I think it's the entire conference. For some reason, they're just not respecting the conference. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, Oklahoma State wins out. They take care of OU at the end of the season. They go to the Big 12 championship game, play whoever it is they're going to play. They still might not get in. So the Big 12, as far as having a representative in the top 4, it's a long, long stretch for them to get there, in my opinion.
We got a lot to figure out still with a few games to play, and we'll at some point be asking what happens to Alabama if they have a second loss here in the SEC title game. We'll cross that bridge, gentlemen, when we get there. I know some are saying they're gone, but would not surprise me if the committee sneaks them in there at number 4 for a little entertainment value. We do it every week, every Tuesday, gentlemen. We need your final ranking prediction. We could have chaos. We could have stand pat. We'll see how it goes down. Dennis, title your top 4 when it's all said and done.
I've got Georgia, obviously going to win out. I've got Michigan because I think they're going to beat Ohio State at the end of the year and be that one team standing in the Big Ten with 1 loss. I've got Oregon, as I said, they somewhat control their own destiny if they win out. I think they're going to win at Utah and then win the rest of their games. And I've got Cincinnati because in that scenario, that creates an opening for that, what would be the only other or one of the only 3 teams that are undefeated. I'm going to say Cincinnati gets in at number 4 right now. How's that for chaos?
I like that. Cincinnati in at 4, Michigan beating Ohio State. A lot happening in Dennis Dodd's final prediction. B-Mac, what say you?
My final prediction, guys, I've been going back and forth with this. Back and forth, back and forth. Primarily speaking, my number 1 and my number 2. So, with that being said, drums, please.
We'll give you it. We'll give you it.
I'll go Bama number 1, Georgia number 2, Oregon 3, Ohio State 4. I feel like we will see we will see Bama take care of Georgia in the SEC championship game. That would drop Georgia to 1 spot. Bama would get the number 1 spot. And we got Oregon taking care of their business throughout the way. Ohio State the same, taking care of their business. They get in the top 4, and that's my top 4 for the playoffs. When it's all said and done.
Gentlemen, fantastic stuff as always. The beauty of it all, as we say, we get to watch it play out in front of our eyes. Thank you, guys. All right, let's take a look at things by the numbers according to our friends at Caesar Sportsbook. Left column, odds to make the playoff. Right column, odds to miss the playoff. You're getting 10-1 on the Bulldogs to miss the playoff. A lot would have to happen. All but cemented right now. Bama, minus 130, plus 110 to miss. So Vegas is saying if Alabama loses that SEC title game, it's over. Kaput. Just like Dennis Dodd said. Oregon, meanwhile, 3-1 to make it in. So if you think that they win out, and obviously hard to bump them if they do win out, pay you 3-1 on your dollar. The Buckeyes, meanwhile, a little bit of minus money there. They're expected to stay on the inside along with Alabama and Georgia. The only minus money to make the playoffs.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.